The season started amid speculation over the immediate future of Alain Prost. Fired from Ferrari at the end of '91, he was thought to be on the verge of joining the Ligier team. He did a lot of winter testing, often disguised in other drivers' helmets, but eventually decided against joining the team. He took a sabbatical year instead. In other teams, there were many changes. Ferrari restructured their team after a poor '91 and brought their former world champion Niki Lauda in as the team advisor. On the driver's front, Ivan Capelli joined Jean Alesi. Tyrrell was reshaped as well. Two new drivers, Olivier Gouillard and Andrea de Cesaris, will be powered by Ilmore's V10 engine. The same engine was to propel Paul Belmondo and Carl Wendlinger, driving for the under-financed March team under the guidance of the designer Gustav Brunner. Brabham introduced the first lady driver in Formula One in 15 years. Giovanna Amati found her transition into Formula One somewhat difficult.
Well, technically the car is really faster. The gearbox is completely different. The brakes are completely different. The engine, the use of the engine is different. The grip of the tires, everything. I mean everything.
The 1991 Formula 3000 champion Christian Fittipaldi was another newcomer. The 21-year-old joined the Minardi team, watched closely by his father, the former Brabham driver Wilson, and advised by his uncle Emerson, the former double world champion. At Minardi, he replaced Pierluigi Martini, who went to Italian neighbours Dallara. Former sports car world champion Martin Brundle finally got his big chance by joining the Benetton team. But his task would not be easy, with the rising star Michael Schumacher already well established within the team. Outstanding debutants in 1991 Jordan was another totally reorganized team for the new season. They had two new drivers in Stefano Modena and Maurizio Gugelmin, and even more significantly, the new engine, Yamaha's V12. Venturi LaRousse introduced a new Japanese star in Ukio Katayama, and the Swiss Andrea Chiesa was learning Formula One with the Fon-Metal team.
But of course, I try to not. I try to always look at the mirrors and try to let pass other people quicker than me. Was a big surprise first time that the Senna passed me. I saw that I was watching the TV.
The Brazilian triple world champion knew from the outset he would be facing a tough year. Last season he'd struggled but succeeded to hold off Nigel Mansell in the Williams Renault. But this year he felt would be even harder.
We all have seen last year the fight has been great between all of us, and I think perhaps we'll have another season like that.
Ayrton sitting here is going to be formidable this year, as he has been the last couple of years, so it's real early days yet.
Senna and McLaren were facing not only Mansell's determination, but the most sophisticated package in the pit lane. Fully developed active suspension, semi-automatic gearbox and traction control. Here's how the teams lined up. Ayrton Senna, the defending world champion, with McLaren. Gerhard Berger, his McLaren teammate. Olivier Gouillard of France for Tyrrell, alongside Andrea de Cesaris of Italy. Britain's Nigel Mansell with Williams. Riccardo Patrese, his Williams teammate. Eric van der Poel and Giovanna Amati, the Brabham lineup. Michele Alboreto for footwork, with Aguri Suzuki of Japan. Mika Häkkinen for Lotus, with Johnny Herbert of Great Britain. Andrea Chiesa of Switzerland for Fon-Metal, alongside Italian Gabriele Tarquini. Carl Wendlinger for March, with Frenchman Paul Belmondo. The battling German Michael Schumacher for Benetton, alongside the experienced British driver Martin Brundle. JJ Leto of Finland for Dallara, with the Italian Pierluigi Martini. Christian Fittipaldi, Minardi. Gianni Morbidelli, his Minardi teammate. The Ligier lineup, Thierry Boutsen of Belgium, Eric Comas of France. Jean Alesi of France for Ferrari, with the Italian Ivan Capelli. For Venturi, Bertrand Gachot of Belgium, Ukio Katayama of Japan. And the Jordan lineup, Stefano Modena and the Brazilian Maurizio Gugelmin. He completely dominated both sessions and beat the world champion Ayrton Senna comfortably to take the 18th pole position of his career.
On this Kyle Army circuit, Mansell knew that the first start of the season would be all-important. At the green light, he out-sprinted Senna into the first corner to take the lead, exactly as he did 7 years ago. For Senna, the writing was on the wall when Riccardo Patrese and the other Williams pushed his way through to second place, and together with Mansell, started to vanish into the distance. First lap brought more drama when Martin Brundle's Benetton touched Andrea de Cesaris's Tyrrell and spun. Brundle restarted, but retired soon after with a broken clutch. Ferrari's season started dismally, with first Ivan Capelli and then Jean Alesi retiring with engine problems. By that time, Mansell's lead over Patrese and Senna was more than 20 seconds, and he was busy lapping slower cars, supported avidly by the fans. Behind the leading trio, the young German Michael Schumacher, driving his 7th Grand Prix in a Benetton, drove steadily to finish 4th. Lotus driver Johnny Herbert scored his best result in 3 years, finishing a very promising 6th. So after the potential of the previous year, it was a perfect 1-2 for the Williams team.
Mansell was never really threatened, and Patrese successfully fended off Senna's challenge to finish 10 seconds ahead of the Brazilian. 3 weeks later, Formula One crossed the Atlantic and came to Mexico City. Nigel Mansell made an early inspection of the track, giving his thoughts on the Peraltada corner.
And because it's such a fast corner, it's going to make it mighty dangerous, because if you get on the marbles, then you're in 5th or 6th gear, you know, your history, you're going to go off.
Mansell survived this nasty moment, but he was open in his criticism. Indeed, Senna, who had a major accident here in '91, hit the bump on Friday and lost control. The Brazilian was in considerable pain from an injured leg. However, he would be fit enough to drive again on Saturday, on his 32nd birthday, and qualify a brave 6th on the grid.
Mansell took pole position once again, but this time Patrese was just fractionally slower, and Schumacher was less than a second adrift.
With the Englishman having won here 5 years ago, but being beaten by Patrese fair and square in 1991 after a big battle, the race seemed wide open. At the start, however, Mansell pulled away clearly. But in the midfield, chaos reigned as Karl Wendlinger hit Capelli's Ferrari and sent him into the wall. Mansell led into the first corner, and all Patrese could do was watch the tail of the other Williams once again. Capelli, meanwhile, was eager to get back to his pit, as Wendlinger paid a little more attention to the march. Mansell led Patrese, Senna and Brundle. Schumacher recovered from a bad start by forcing Berger out of 5th spot. The German would soon pass Brundle for 4th. And it became 3rd place when Senna's transmission broke on the 12th lap. For more than half of the race, Berger and Brundle bitterly disputed 4th place. The Englishman was in truly inspired mood. And a spectating Senna found it all rather amusing. But Ferrari's star Jean Alesi found the lack of his car's straight line speed appalling when de Cesaris easily passed him on lap 30. The Frenchman's engine would expire 2 laps later. And the same thing happened to a frustrated Martin Brundle 20 laps from home. But it was no problems for Mansell, apart from a smashed mirror, and he easily scored his 2nd win of the year.
He eased off towards the end, allowing Patrese to come closer, while Schumacher stepped on the winner's podium for the first time. Mansell's 20th pole position was a major achievement, as he was more than a second faster than Patrese and more than 2 seconds faster than Senna.
Could anybody stop Mansell? Was the new McLaren a technological match for the Williams? That's what Senna was certainly thinking about as he prepared to start his home race. For once, Mansell had too much wheel spin, and Patrese reached the first corner leading. Senna started well, but once again he could only watch the Williamses as they pulled away. After several laps, Senna, with his car proving very quick on the straight, was trailing a large group of pursuers led by Schumacher, and the young German wasn't at all happy about it.
Ayrton was quite slow. I was always quicker than him, but there was no chance to overtake him. And then he started, I would say after 10 laps, he started to play a game, I don't know. He couldn't finish, and he just braked us in the slow corner where no chance was to overtake. In the straight, he just go on the throttle back and drove away from us. And once there was a situation, he let me pass, came in a slipstream and passed me back. Just to do it like this, that somebody else can overtake me, you know. And I'm really upset about Ayrton. I think it is not really necessary for a 3-time world champion to do something like this.
It all ended on lap 17 when Senna was terminally stopped by electrical problems, retiring from his second race in a row. Patrese and Mansell, meanwhile, had their own private battle in front. It intensified as they started to lap slower cars, but the championship leader never managed to pass his teammate until the tyre stops. Mansell came in first and was stationary for some 8.5 seconds. This was a second faster than Patrese's stop, and it was enough to give Mansell the lead in the race. Behind Schumacher, the fourth-placed battle between Alesi and Brundle ended in tears. The same spot, 6 laps later. 2 Ligiers, Comas and Boutsen, disputing the same bit of tarmac. And they eliminated Johnny Herbert in the process as well. With Patrese unable to make any impression, Nigel Mansell cruised to yet another win, the 24th of his career. With their third double on the trot, the Williams team were firmly on their way towards the 1992 World Championship after only 3 races. Nigel Mansell grabbed the championship lead firmly in his hands, with 12 points more than his teammate, a further 7 more than Schumacher.
In Brazil, he lapped the entire field save for Patrese, and his form could only be described as frightening. Schumacher was to start the race from the front row for the first time in his short career, but he was still a full second slower than Mansell.
Just before the start, more rain forced everybody to change tyres on the grid, but at least it seemed the wet track would be a welcome equaliser. Alesi started perfectly, some said too perfectly, but Mansell and Patrese held their positions and once again led the pack. Senna made an untypically bad start and found himself 7th into the first corner. But he immediately passed his teammate Berger and then quickly disposed of Brundle as well to start a race-long chase after Schumacher. Berger's attempt to deal with Alesi in the same way ended like this. Alesi's acrobatics cost him his tyres, and he had to call in to change them halfway through the race. But once the Ferrari mechanics had given him his fresh rubber, his was to be a very inspiring race. The same cannot be said for Patrese' race. He was to mark up the Williams team's first retirement of the season. Closing on Häkkinen to lap him, he lost it. With the Ferrari people watching his every move, Jean Alesi kept on moving up the field, despite occasional hiccups. And Häkkinen was the culprit again. Towards the end of the race, the conditions became so bad that even Senna, a renowned rainmaster, first spun and then crashed for good from his third place. Mansell, however, never put a foot wrong and won masterfully. It was his 25th career win, which put him equal to the great Scot Jim Clark. With 4 wins from 4 starts, he also equalled Senna's record from '91. Schumacher continued his rise and finished second in only his 10th Grand Prix, while Jean Alesi finally gave Ferrari something to cheer about by taking third after Senna's demise. They were wet with rain, and now they could be wet with the traditional champagne.
Michele Alboreto gave Team Footwork their best ever result, while Pierluigi Martini scored the first point for Dallara Ferrari.
Very important to finish on the podium because all the tifosi in Italy are following Ferrari. Also, of course, all the other drivers and especially Nigel, because he's very popular in Italy.
Fans came to Imola in their thousands. There were celebrity fans such as Olympic skiing champion Alberto Tomba and former Ferrari driver René Arnoux. There was Italian film star Dalila Di Lazzaro and fashion giant Luciano Benetton and his former driver Alessandro Nannini. Was again more than a second faster than Riccardo Patrese. Senna's McLaren improved, but obviously not enough, and others were too far behind to pose any serious threat.
Well, the Ferraris were back on the 4th row, but the fans didn't seem to mind too much. But at the start, Mansell did it once again. With Patrese firmly covering his back, he was already pulling away as the field rushed down to the Tosa bend. Brundle had started well as he outsprinted both his teammates Schumacher and Berger, and after failing to finish in any of the first 4 races, the 1988 World Sports Car champion seemed today to be on better form than his German teammate. Schumacher tried everything he knew to pass Brundle, but on lap 19 he overdid it in the double left-handed Ravazza corner. He didn't want his day's motor racing to be over, but the damage to his Benetton suspension was too much. Alesi was going well in the leading Ferrari, but the McLarens wound him in. He let Senna through to 3rd place quite easily, but he was in no mood to repeat it with Berger. To the dismay of the Italian fans, one of the Ferraris was out. It took the marshals a while to clear the track, but they managed it, and the race was not stopped. So, as the race went on, Jean Alesi had cheers as he ran home. At Imola, they cheer a Ferrari driver, no matter what happens. There was another scare when the Japanese Ukio Katayama lost a part of the bodywork from his Larousse Venturi. The bodywork was finally picked up by a brave marshal, but Nigel Mansell passed by a little too close for comfort. The Tifosi saw no reason for staying any longer. There were no Ferraris left in the race, Capelli had also spun off, and Nigel Mansell was leading by a mile. For Frank Williams and his technical director Patrick Head, the race was as absorbing as ever. And they were able to watch Nigel Mansell come up to the line to take his record-breaking 5th win. 5 starts, 5 wins, a new record for Nigel Mansell.
Patrese closed in the dying laps, but he could do no more. Senna finished a distant 3rd and in agony. He suffered from severe cramps and shoulder pain and couldn't get out of the car until long after the race.
Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, Riccardo Patrese. The problem, it appears, for Mansell was there was a cut in the rear tyre. The tyre went down, and that was why he had to make the pit stop in those very closing laps of the Grand Prix.
Well, we're waiting for the interviewer to come to the interview room and then talk to the winner,
Ayrton,
Nigel Mansell, and the
fifth Monte Carlo Grand Prix win. What an effort at the end. You didn't expect to win.
I didn't expect at all. I think, okay, we did our best. The car, the engine, the mechanics, the preparation, all throughout the weekend. And we were there at the end. But of course, we were never as fast as both Williams, both Mansell and Riccardo. And in the race was a little better for me than qualifying. But even so, I trying my whole best wasn't good enough even to match Mansell's that time. And I would say that as far as Monte Carlo is concerned, I use all the experience I have learned here over all those years that I managed to finish the races, learning how the situation changed throughout the race here. And I use my equipment to the best possibilities, but I think, of course, without Mansell stopping for tires, we would never come any closer to a victory.
What about that incredible pressure at the end from Nigel there? How did you actually manage to resist that?
Just to keep up with the adrenaline, I suppose. Normally the last 10 laps of every race you are just trying to motivate yourself to go right to the end and struggling in a way. And this time, I must say, I tried really hard mid-race to not let the gap go extremely too big for any eventuality that I would be not too far, you know. And I had a very unlucky situation when Alboreto spun on Mirabeau, and I come and I nearly hit his car. I had to stop completely. I stayed there. I lost about 8 to 9 seconds because I was stopped there, parked there. So I lost there 8-9 seconds, which were very valuable for late stage race in the event of some eventuality, which eventually happened. I was only counting on those things. That's why I kept pushing hard, as hard as I could the whole race. But once the last 5-6 laps, I realized I was in the lead. I had nothing else to give. The tires were completely worn out. They were good for the whole race, but they were worn out at the end. There was no grip. And he had new tires. He was coming for everything. So I knew he would be in for a major one in the last 3 laps. But it was exciting, but very difficult because he was several seconds faster than me for every lap. And I had no grip to put the power down, so it was like on ice driving around. And fortunately, I think we were only 3 or 4 laps that way.
From Monaco to Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix. Fresh from his Monaco triumph, Senna let it be known that he was back into challenging, winning form.
He dominated the Friday qualifying session, leaving Mansell only 4th fastest. On Saturday, Mansell was faster than Senna, and faster than everyone else. But the track was now considerably slower, so that Senna was fastest overall. And he was watched by 2 interested guests at McLaren, Mario and Michael Andretti. Senna clinched the 61st pole position of his career, and for the sake of the 1992 World Championship, everybody hoped he would increase his points score here.
Most unusually, Mansell would start the race from the 2nd row of the grid. It promised to be very interesting. The top 5 qualifiers were covered by less than a second.
So to the race. And at the green light, Mansell started well, but he just failed to pass Senna into the 1st corner. He tried to do it several times in the first few laps, but Senna calmly employed his Monaco tactics and stayed ahead. Nigel was getting fed up with seeing the back of a McLaren for the second race running. And Senna even eased away a little bit. Meanwhile, further down the field, the LaRousse Venturi drivers Gasho and Katayama were involved in a rather destructive fratricidal tussle over 12th place. But on lap 15, Mansell did even worse, crashing out for good. Gerhard Berger saw the whole thing.
Nigel tried to overtake Ayrton on the end of the straight, just coming into the chicane before the start-finish line. And, I mean, I was thinking before to do the same with Patrese, but we all know that it's very dirty inside, and if you go brake later, you have a good chance to go straight over the thing, and that's exactly what's happened. He tried to overtake him, Ayrton brake late, he tried to brake later, it was dirty, and he went straight over the chicane and he spun and he went in the wall.
Mansell stayed in the cockpit of his car for a lap and showed Ayrton Senna what he thought about the incident as the leaders went by on the next lap. Knowing Senna was now free to take the win as he wished, Mansell was not much in a mood to discuss the matter with journalists. But he needn't have worried. Senna's hopes expired some 20 laps later as the Honda's electronics failed. Before the season was half over, what was left of Senna's World Championship chances now seemed definitely lost. But the Brazilian was still better off than Ivan Capelli. Miraculously, the Italian was unhurt. And what could have been a fine 5th place for Katayama ended up in fire and smoke when his engine blew up just 8 laps before the end. Karl Wendlinger, however, made it to the end and scored a 4th place, his best ever result, and a big encouragement for the underfunded March team. But there was an even happier Austrian at the front of the race. With Patrese dropping out soon after Senna, Berger was the only survivor from the top 2 teams. Gradually pulling away from Schumacher, he scored his 6th Grand Prix win despite gearbox problems. A great day for Austria.
Alesi was again on the podium, albeit due to others' misfortune this time, and De Cesaris repeated his 5th place from Mexico. Comas scored the first point for the Ligier team in 48 races, but Senna and McLaren were back. Once again, and Senna was once more way off Mansell's time. Schumacher was 5th, not too far away.
Clouds gathered in the region, and it seemed inevitable it would rain later in the afternoon. At the start, however, it was dry. Patrese made a perfect getaway and led the field through the first lap. For the first half of that first lap, everything was fine. But then, on the approach to the hairpin, 2 separate accidents happened. Still Patrese leading Mansell and the 2 McLarens. But Schumacher was getting impatient. First, Schumacher hit Senna, eliminating him on the spot. And then Gasho, Wendlinger and Gugelmin all crashed into one another, adding to the confusion. Here is how Schumacher saw his crash with Senna. Back at the front of the field, Patrese and Mansell had soon left everybody else behind, but far from running according to any team orders, they seemed to be determined to battle for the lead. The leaders were eagerly watched from the sidelines by their greatest rivals. Berger had retired 9 laps after Senna with engine problems. They enjoyed their pastime until rain drove them into the McLaren garage. In fact, it was now raining so hard that the race had to be stopped. Jean Alesi, 4th at the time, did what everybody else did, stopped on the dry spot under the bridge after the finish line. The race was to be restarted after everybody had changed to rain tyres, but in fact the sun appeared and it was to be a dry race again. As Griard blatantly jumped the start at the back, Patrese repeated his earlier performance and led once again. On down to the hairpin, Mansell was closing and he went past. But he also went a little wide and was passed again. Schumacher's fighting mood, meanwhile, finally waned as he tripped over Modernist Jordan at exactly the same place where he'd compromised his race early on. Here's his view once again. And here's the crash from another angle. On the next lap, Patrese waved Mansell through. After his earlier resistance, were there now team orders? And several laps later, the rain came back, and everybody called in the pits for tyres, except Alesi, who for many laps opted to stay on the slicks despite impossible conditions. He survived this big spin, but finally had to change his tyres, only to retire 6 laps later with a blown engine. It was a sad end to a brilliant drive. Mansell, however, ended his brilliant drive in his usual style.
That's the sign. As ever, watch the lights, and it is 59 laps, the British Grand Prix of 1992. He's go, and Mansell straight on the power. Patrese alongside him. The Italian has again out-dragged Nigel Mansell. He leads into Copse, and Martin Brundle has passed Schumacher, and then the two McLarens, and Martin Brundle has made an absolute flyer, as has Patrese. And Patrese, the Italian in the Williams Renault, is now in second position because Nigel Mansell has exerted his authority and has surged past Patrese, who is now being attacked by Martin Brundle, and Schumacher is being attacked by one of the McLarens. I didn't see whether it was Senna or it's Senna. They're coming down to Stowe Corner now. Mansell leads, Patrese, Brundle, Senna is in 4th position in the McLaren. Berger is going through to 5th past Schumacher, and Alesi has been taken by Johnny Herbert, who started ahead of the Ferrari, lost the position and has regained it. There he is, car 12, the Lotus of Johnny Herbert. Mansell still leads, and there are 58 full fast laps to go at the end of this one.
Yes, and a tremendous first couple of corners, because Senna and Schumacher rejoined their battle that they had in Magny-Cours, where Schumacher rather rudely attacked Senna, and Martin Brundle keeping his position over Ayrton Senna, who was attacking, as Mansell already opening up a very large gap. Mansell got a fair bit of wheel spin at the start, but it's all action. And Schumacher taking Berger, Herbert inside Berger. And Berger got jumped then, as he had jumped Schumacher at the end of Hanger Straight, and it is all action behind the two Williamses.
Indeed, and the man to watch is Martin Brundle. He's pulling away from Senna, who is just keeping ahead of Schumacher, and in 6th position it's Johnny Herbert. So it's good for Britain. 3 British drivers in the top 3 at the end of lap 1, and there is the leader.
And it really is like a 10-lap race, the way they're going at it for 3rd place and behind. But in the meantime, Martin Brundle, who hasn't made a great start, has not been party to the argy-bargy, has got a clear run, has been able to give it everything. Schumacher getting inside Senna. And this is really hairy stuff. Senna not giving way. He must feel a little bit threatened by Schumacher's inexperience, because that's what he felt caused him big trouble in Magny-Cours. But he's not showing any fear of it. And he won't want this attention. He'll want to be chasing Martin Brundle, and Brundle is going fabulously well. As I say, unmolested by the infighting behind, and that always slows the pursuers down. Through Bridge Corner now. And Ayrton Senna, maybe in an uncompetitive car relative to the Williamses now, and even possibly to the Benettons, but he's showing why he's been 3 times world champion. He is not giving up. He gives no quarter.
Nigel Mansell led by 3.2 seconds after the first lap, a quite incredible lead. Here he is, he's piling on the pressure, he's breaking the opposition. 1 minute 26.9 his first lap. Now he leads by 6 seconds. Patrese 2nd, Brundle 3rd, Senna 4th, Schumacher 5th, Herbert 6th. Then it's Berger, Alesi, Kovassen and Mika Hakkinen in 10th position in the 2nd Lotus.
Yes, and Martin Brundle lapping 3 seconds a lap slower than Nigel Mansell, and that is exactly confirming the practice and qualifying form and the superiority of the Williams, which has been big all season, is now absolutely enormous here at Silverstone. The circuit really suits the car, or should I say it the other way round, whichever way you want to look at it, and this is the biggest margin we have yet seen between the Williamses and the others. Riccardo Patrese playing very much a subordinate role to Nigel Mansell, but in a comfortable second place as Schumacher continues to harry Ayrton Senna.
And down shortly to complete another lap, because Nigel Mansell, race leader, is through Luffield 2. He's coming into Woodcote now to complete lap 3 in this 59-lap race. There's Mansell just at the bottom of your picture, and look how far back you have to look to see Riccardo Patrese in the second Williams. There is Mansell into Cox Corner at 140 miles an hour and more, accelerating away. Look, you see, he's very soon going to be in a position, he's leading by 8 seconds now, where he can actually back off and control the race. Not yet, but on his second lap, he was only 0.6 of a second outside the lap record, and that's with a full fuel load. And so, Patrese in second position. He's got a gap between himself and Martin Brundle of 1.5 seconds. And here they come. This is Patrese second, Brundle third. Senna is in fourth place. Tucked behind him and attacking is Michael Schumacher in fifth position. In sight is Johnny Herbert.
And Johnny Herbert really confirming his and the Lotus's good form, because he's up there splitting the McLarens. He's ahead of Gerhard Berger. That's Senna going through. Schumacher still chasing but not actually attacking at the moment, so Senna able to settle a bit, which he wants to do because he wants to get rid of those attentions. And behind, you saw Herbert there in the background behind Schumacher, with Berger following him.
And this is 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna in a McLaren which does not handle as well here at Silverstone as the Williams Renault ahead of it, and it shows, of course, because now on lap 4 Senna is some 10 seconds behind Nigel Mansell and being harried by Michael Schumacher, as Riccardo Patrese, showing no sign of the crash he had yesterday, goes through second. There is Senna, fourth, Schumacher fifth, Johnny Herbert in sixth position, Berger in seventh place, and behind Gerhard Berger in eighth position, it's the Ferrari of Jean Alesi, followed by the Ligier of Comas, and the second Lotus of Mika Hakkinen in 10th place. Senna and Schumacher. They love him and he loves them. And Nigel Mansell comes out of Luffield 1 into Luffield 2, which is the last corner but one. They're breaking ranks. The Union Jacks are waving, and Nigel Mansell wins the 1992 British Grand Prix in terrific style. Hands off the wheel. He sees the opportunity to become the world champion getting greater and greater as he completes that winning lap, and is now on his wind-down lap. Now the tradition, and it's not one I approve of, to be quite honest with you, as Patrese comes through in second place, is for the crowd to go onto the course as they do in Le Mans. And that's very dangerous, of course, because there are drivers a lap or so behind the leaders who are still going at racing speed. But Riccardo Patrese is going to finish in second place to make it the sixth, first and second for the Williams team in 1992. Doesn't mean to say they'll do it. They are already all over the course in the start and finish position. But Mansell now is savouring this, and justifiably so.
In qualifying on the twisty Hungaroring, Patrese was, for once, faster than Mansell. But this weekend, Nigel was playing it safe.
Still, Mansell was not far behind, and he was still more than half a second faster than Senna. Schumacher again completed the second row.
To win the title, Mansell needed to win in Hungary or to finish third if Patrese failed to score. It looked easy, but the pressure was now really on. Patrick Head knew all about it. 3 drivers had won titles in his cars earlier. Jones in 1980, Rosberg in 1982, Piquet in 1987. Mansell knew it was his turn finally. Would he make it this time? Uncharacteristically, he made a very slow start, allowing both Senna and Berger to go by and chase Patrese into the first corner. Fourth place wouldn't be enough to get the championship today. Belgian Eric van der Poel made a mess out of his debut for the Von Metal team. On lap 8, Mansell decided enough was enough, and he took 3rd place from Berger. He was now after Senna, but the Brazilian, predictably, proved more difficult to pass. Mansell's cause wasn't helped by an uncooperative and lapped Martini. Alone in the 20-second lead, Patrese suddenly spun, lost a lot of time and dropped to 7th place. This changed the situation dramatically. If Mansell stayed 3rd, he would be champion. If Patrese got back into the points, Mansell would have to pass Senna. But just as things looked good for him, Mansell had to change his tyres 6 laps later. Even though Patrese was now out with a blown engine, it seemed that the title was slipping from Nigel's hands. But he rejoined the race at a furious pace. He was now down in 6th place. He was helped a little by Schumacher losing his rear wing, with dramatic consequences just 2 laps later. Thankfully, Schumacher was unhurt. The incident had probably been caused by Brundle gently nudging his teammate earlier in the race. Mansell quickly caught the 4th-placed Häkkinen and passed him on lap 66. He was now only 1 step from the title. On the next lap, he was with Brundle and passed him easily. He was 3rd and potentially the world champion. But just to be on the safe side, Mansell decided he should pass Berger again. He did so, just, and he was now 2nd. Senna, in the meantime, cruised safely to his 2nd win of the season. Victory for McLaren. But Mansell finished his 176th Grand Prix race some 40 seconds later with a 2nd place that was enough to clinch him his 1st World Championship after 12 years of trying. A proud moment for him and for the team. And Roseanne Mansell was congratulated by Peter Windsor.
Thanks very much. Well, and to you, actually. You did a very good job. We're going to give you a hard time. Every opportunity will.
The outgoing champion Senna was the first to greet Mansell in Parc Fermé. The Brazilian scored his 35th Grand Prix win after a fine race. His teammate Berger kept Brundle and Häkkinen at bay to finish 3rd. But Mansell was the champion. Formula One with some stormy weather. But not all the Grand Prix weekend had been like this.
Friday morning was nice and sunny, but not for Eric Comas, who crashed heavily in the fast Blanchimont sweep before the pits. Ayrton Senna was the first to reach the scene of the crash, and he rushed to help the motionless Frenchman. Fortunately, Comas suffered only concussion and bruising, but he would take no further part in the Belgian Grand Prix.
Some qualifying did take place, and not surprisingly, Mansell topped the times, over 2 seconds ahead of Senna and much more ahead of the others.
The race started on a dry track, but rain was obviously threatening. At the green light, Mansell led Senna away. But further down the grid, the man who wasn't moving was Gerhard Berger. He he never managed to move his clutchless McLaren from the line. His teammate Senna, meanwhile, took an early lead and managed to keep ahead of Mansell until the end of lap 2. But then Nigel lined up behind Senna and bravely dived inside him at the entry to Blanchiment and took the lead. As it started to rain quite heavily, Patrese followed suit and passed Senna for second place. On the very next lap, the leaders were into the pits to change tyres, bringing chaos to the lap charts. More and more of them came in, but Senna stayed out. Then he too had to change cars and dropped to 12th place, and as the rain stopped and the track started to dry, Schumacher had a quick off, damaging his tyres in the process. He decided to change them for dry ones. It was a momentous decision. On the fast-drying track, Mansell delayed his tyre change for too long. By the time he came in, Schumacher was able to run away with the lead. On his dry tyres, Mansell did start to catch the German towards the end of the race, but then his Renault engine started to miss fire, and that destroyed all hopes for him of a win at Spa. So, by a combination of luck and clever tactics, Schumacher went on to win his first Grand Prix victory, exactly a year after his debut in Formula 1 on this very track. He became the first German to win a Grand Prix since Jochen Mass in Spain 17 years before. The Benetton team had scored their first win for more than a year.
I really won this race. Unbelievable, and I have to say thank you to the team.
And into the record books because it's the first German driver to get a Grand Prix win since Jochen Mass back in 1975, so a proud moment for you in Germany.
Yeah, that's right. I think the German fans have waiting a long time for Formula 1 Grand Prix victory, and I really give this victory to the German fans, I have to say.
One incident where you ran wide and then you came into the pits for dry tyres. What happened there?
I just missed the apex a bit, turned in a bit too late and went a bit over the grass. Actually, I was happy that I didn't hit the barrier. But at that time I was behind Martin and I could see that his tyres were blistered, and it was a good situation for me, and immediately I decided to go in for tyre change.
Surely a big party tonight at Benetton.
Yeah, surely.
Nigel Mansell.
With speculation about his Formula 1 future reaching wild proportions, Mansell caused a minor sensation on Friday when he had a very public chat with McLaren's boss Ron Dennis. But the bomb was finally to explode on Sunday morning, with Mansell holding a press conference.
Due to circumstances beyond my control, I have decided to retire from Formula 1 at the end of this season.
The news had yet to sink in, notably in his own team, but everybody had something to say about Mansell and his world title.
He's probably, oh no, without doubt, the most electrifying of all the drivers. In my opinion, none of the previous three could get out of a car what he does when he's on a qualifying lap.
Well, I think there's only one word. It's been excellent, you know. And he's won a lot of races. He's won the championship very early. Made a mistake in Brazil with Senna, but that's about it. Brilliant.
The car is so good, and also he has a lot of confidence. He has no problem with his teammate, and I think it should be okay, no problem.
I'm just pleased that there's another British driver up there winning as often as Nigel is.
I mean, he rates as, winning the first championship is always the most difficult one. It took Nigel quite a while to achieve it. But he's a real good world champion, I think, and he rates as high as any other world champion.
I think it's been a great success and fully deserved. He's been very aggressive behind the wheel, and he's a very strong man, and I think that's played a big part in this year's championship.
Back on the track, Mansell was in fine form. Again, he dominated both days of qualifying, but it was not so sweet anymore.
This time, Senna was not so far behind, and Alesi was third quickest in a very fast Ferrari, faster even than Patrese's Williams.
Before the race, Alesi was not particularly relaxed. Always pressure on Ferrari drivers at Monza. Gerhard Berger wasn't relaxed either. He was obliged to start from the pit lane with last-minute engine problems. More bad luck for him. But at the green light, it was Mansell who finally led the race away, while Ayrton Senna quickly disposed of Jean Alesi. But the Brazilian was to prove unable to stay with Mansell, who slowly began to build up a sizable lead. Behind him, on lap 14, Patrese caught Senna and smartly outbraked him into the first chicane. Then, 7 laps later, Patrese mysteriously appeared in the lead. Mansell wasn't in trouble and was still pursuing him, but Riccardo Patrese was leading his home Grand Prix. The television replay showed what had happened. Mansell had deliberately waved his teammate past. Mansell continued to follow Patrese for 20 laps, but then suddenly pulled into the pits and retired with a hydraulic failure.
What happened was the supply pressure for the gearbox just dropped, so then I was stuck in 6th gear, but it was a good race. I obviously let Riccardo through and rode shotgun for him because we spoke before the race and he dearly wanted to win this one. And I think now for sure he'll go on and, well, I was going to help him win anyway, but I'm out of the race and he's driving a fantastic race, fantastic year, and I hope that he wins out there with no problem at all.
But it was not to be, as Patrese slowed dramatically amid a shower of sparks. He too had a hydraulic suspension problem. It allowed Senna to close right up, and soon Senna was able to take the lead, just 6 laps to go to the end of the race. Patrese, however, decided he could finish the race, and he cruised slowly round, eventually to finish 5th. So Senna scored his 3rd win of the season. He was lucky, but he was always close enough to the leading Williamses to be ready if anything happened.
Brundle was second yet again, and Schumacher was a splendid 3rd after having to pit early on and replace a broken nose cone.
I'm very happy with my own race because I believe that with the car engine combination we had for us here, it was the very best I could get out of it today during the race.
From the outset of the Portuguese Grand Prix, Mansell was determined to score yet another win and claim the record of 9 victories in a season. Again he dominated the qualifying, and again by staggering margins. Patrese was relatively close, but Senna was again more than a second away.
The new world champion was clearly relaxed just before the start, while the man who would replace him as the first Williams driver, Alain Prost, was visibly less relaxed with his temporary job. Green light. And once again, Mansell ruthlessly led the field. Patrese briefly stayed with him down to the first corner, but then Mansell started to pull away from his teammate. Once again, it was looking so very easy for the Williams-Renault team. Meanwhile, Schumacher had had to start from the back of the grid due to engine problems, but he was soon catching up. Here he passes the hapless Capelli in his last race for Ferrari. Tyre stops were the order of the day. Ayrton Senna had to stop no less than 4 times during the race. Riccardo Patrese stopped only once, but his pit stop went badly wrong. For agonising seconds he sat there while the Williams mechanics struggled with his wheels. And while he was there, he dropped from second place to fourth, behind the Austrian Gerhard Berger. While he was there, Martin Brundle stopped at the same time, although his pit stop went more on routine lines. But during all this excitement, that meant that the Lotus of Mika Hakkinen briefly held second spot, his highest ever race position. Then he too needed a stop and rejoined fifth. After his delay in the pits, Riccardo Patrese caught up quickly with Gerhard Berger's McLaren. Catching him was one thing, passing him would prove to be an entirely different matter. For several laps, the two were glued together in their battle. But awaiting Patrese was potentially the worst accident of his career. Then coming onto the top straight, it happened. Berger saw it this way.
I couldn't say that it was my fault, I couldn't say it was Riccardo's fault, it was just a misunderstanding. He went out from the last corner. I mean, you cannot put up the hand in the last corner, you have everything to do, you have both hands on the steering wheel. And I went out, and straight away, when I come out, I positioned the car straight away in the middle and to go into the pits. And I thought he was gonna come left, because the last time when I looked at the mirror, it was quite a big gap still. And then I just entered the pits, and just when I was already nearly entering the pits, I feel a touch, and I just saw him flying over me, and I was really afraid, and I was sure that he's gonna hurt himself, and I'm very happy now that he's okay.
Patrese survived the crash badly shaken but completely unhurt. It was another testimony of exceptional solidity and strength in a modern Formula One car. Up in front, quite undisturbed by anybody, Mansell cruised to his 9th win. It was another record in the Mansell book.
Berger eventually finished second, the only one who escaped being lapped by the winner. Senna's third place also pushed him into second place in the championship, albeit some 58 points behind Mansell. Their home circuit, Honda, pulling out of Formula One after the Australian Grand Prix, suffered heavily from the Mansell-Williams-Renault competition.
The champion was once again quite relaxed while discussing his car's race setup with engineer David Brown. Mansell seemed to have come to grips with his starts now, because once again he led Patrese away at the green light. 2 Williams Renaults, 2 McLaren Hondas, Schumacher's Benetton, and Johnny Herbert up in 6th place in the Lotus, just ahead of teammate Hakkinen. Further back, Capelli's replacement at Ferrari, Nicola Larini, had to be push-started after stalling the engine on the grid. Senna's race lasted less than 3 laps. His Honda engine seized while he was lying third, not what the Japanese wanted to see in their home Grand Prix. And Mansell went on to build up a handsome lead over the first 20 laps and looked all set for another win. While Ayrton Senna could just watch it on TV. His teammate Berger ran well, but had to pit for fresh tyres twice in the race. And Schumacher lasted only 13 laps before his gearbox packed up. Remember LaRousse Venturi drivers Gasho and Katayama and their adventures from Canada? Incredibly, they did it again, this time fighting for 11th place. Frank Williams was not impressed, but he was even less impressed when he saw Mansell's car engulfed in flames and slowing into retirement. The Englishman had again let Patrese through several laps earlier, and as at Monza, had hit trouble soon afterwards. Patrese was now on his own, but Häkkinen's Ford engine blew up. He'd been lying third at the time, just as his Lotus teammate Johnny Herbert had been when he retired earlier. Mansell had just enough time to return to his garage and change before the end of the race. But this time Patrese did keep going. His car held together, and he finally won his first race of the season. It was some recompense for his nasty scare in Portugal. And he took the checkered flag in his 239th Grand Prix. The first man to meet him and congratulate him after that race was Nigel Mansell. Despite all of Formula One's pressures, here are two teammates who have remained friends.
Berger finished second and gave some consolation to Honda, while Brundle was on the podium once again. But Patrese was a relieved winner.